It's Monday, the 28th of February 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get into it, Sean. And story number 1 is the biggest story of the week. It was the biggest story last week, and it's one we'll be talking about for some time to come. Moscow has poured more troops into Ukraine in its biggest military offensive in Europe since 1945, and a very concerning development overnight with Russian President Vladimir Putin putting the country's nuclear forces on high alert.
Yes, Michael, reports suggest that Russia is getting closer to the capital, but has faced significant resistance, meaning Mr. Putin has ordered in more troops. As you said, overnight he placed the country's nuclear forces on high alert, triggering criticism from the US and its NATO allies. The Biden administration said the decision was totally unacceptable, and Mr. Putin was trying to sow fear in the world. There was some good news, though, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office saying he'd reached an agreement during a phone call with Alexander Lukashenko, the self-declared leader of Belarus, that negotiators from Kyiv and Moscow would meet on the Ukrainian-Belarus border. There's some hope in that. Michael, this is a humanitarian crisis. The United Nations said more than 150,000 Ukrainians have crossed borders into Hungary, Poland, and other neighbouring countries. In terms of casualties, it's actually hard to know. Some estimates put Russian losses at about 3,500. Overnight, Moscow conceded it had lost some troops. There's very limited information about loss of Ukrainian life. Now, the diplomatic response has been quick. China's refusing to criticise Russia, but most other nations are moving to increase sanctions. Part of that is the US, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and the European Commission freezing many of the financial assets and disabling Russian banks and Russia itself's ability to operate in the global financial market. That will hurt the country.
Okay, story number 2, Sean, just follows on fairly neatly from that, the financial market reaction to the ongoing crisis.
It's been really interesting the last couple of days. Broadly, fear was all over the place in the middle of last week and greed by the end of the week. Starting with oil, Brent crude fell back below $100 a barrel. Gas prices also fell back. Now, so far, gas is still flowing between Russia and Europe. If that ends, then energy prices will soar. Gold prices fell back a bit over the weekend. So did wheat prices, and in fact, the Aussie dollar appreciated. It's up to 72.3 US cents. On equity markets, Wall Street actually rallied last week. It fell in the first few days, but then rose at the end of the week. European shares were lower, Japanese shares were lower, Australian shares were lower, but not drastically. Basically, I think investors are waiting to see how big this conflict is and how long it will keep going before making any big bets.
Okay, story number 3, Sean, is all about a situation that's developing back home. The weather along the east coast of the country is causing absolute havoc with flooding, particularly severe in southeast Queensland.
Yes, Michael, thousands of homes could find themselves underwater today. There were hundreds of homes that were flooded yesterday. Tragically, at least 6 people have died from the floods in the state. Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has asked residents in a big area of that southeast Queensland to conserve drinking water. There's worries about one of the big treatment plants up there. Schools have been closed. Now, the Insurance Council of Australia declared the flooding a catastrophe. The good news is that people's claims in the region will be given a priority. The weather system is expected to head south today, and parts of northeastern New South Wales are now in the firing line.
Okay, story number 4, Sean, and for as long as I am sitting here with you, we will be talking about property on Monday mornings because the local property market remains strong, but there are still some more signs of slowing.
Yes, nationally the clearance rate was slightly lower over the weekend at 74.3%, according to CoreLogic's preliminary figures. It's still a pretty good outcome, particularly given there were nearly 3,400 houses up for auction. Now, Adelaide was the best performer at 85%. Canberra had a 76% clearance rate. Brisbane was at 73%. Melbourne was down to 71%. And remember, it was low a week earlier. Now, Sydney's clearance rate rose to almost 77%, but prices, the average price, actually fell a touch last week. CoreLogic is forecasting a slight drop in prices in Sydney this year now and flat prices in Melbourne. Certainly the heat has come out of it.
And finally, Sean, story number 5 today. There's been lots of questions over the last couple of years about where COVID-19 actually came from. Questions over whether it was a market in Wuhan or escaped from a lab. But it looks like those questions have been answered.
Yes, this is a report in the New York Times. Scientists have analysed data from a variety of sources and then concluded that the coronavirus was very likely present in live mammals sold in a Wuhan wholesale market in late 2019, and they suggest that the virus twice spilled over into people working or shopping there. They found no support for an alternative theory that the coronavirus escaped from a laboratory in Wuhan.
Okay, that's it. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 28th of February, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if you'd like something a little bit longer, a little bit more detail, and some interviews as well, then you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.